Wireshark on the go. Extend your Wireshark with extcap and powered by iPad and Pi. I'm Megumi Takeshita, IK Network Service. I'm fortunately a reseller of test technologies in 2008. So I have a nice relationship with Ethereum and Wireshark ecosystems. So I also troubleshooter, network and security analyst, as well as one of small contributor of Wireshark. For example, I wrote my TS file of Wireshark, translating Wireshark into Japanese since Wireshark 2. These sessions, I talk about 3 tips about capturing using especially for extcap interface. Part 1, Wireshark on the go. Bring your Wireshark without PC, Wireshark everywhere with iPad Pro. Everyone say, oh, I want to have iOS versions of Wireshark, or I want to have Android version of Wireshark. But there are no such things, but we can run Wireshark in your tablet. We need just iPad Pro I used, or as a tablet with USB-C connectors. And Raspberry Pi 4 I recommend, or Raspberry Pi 0, you can do this. And just one USB-C to USB-C cables. Okay. Transferring both power and data. Okay. Next. At first, run the latest Raspberry Pi OS using official image application to micro SD card. It's common things. I skip this. Using wired Ethernet connection to set up Raspberry Pi at first. I recommend to use Raspberry Pi 4 because there are one RJ45 as well as wireless LAN port. And this is important. Set Raspberry Pi as USB gadget mode. USB gadget mode is a kind of USB on-the-go mode. And USB gadget mode, I think Raspberry Pi 0 and Raspberry Pi 4 support these settings. Your Pi works as USB host instead of USB devices. Raspberry Pi 0 and 4 supports this gadget mode. I recommend to choose Raspberry Pi 4 because of wired LAN and main USB port for expansion and fast. And I talk about some settings things, but it's not so important. Please see attached document in chat screens and set up Pi as USB gadget mode and create boot config text and boot command line text and edit like this to support USB gadget mode. Then set up SSH and DHCP server settings. Create just a blank SSH file for SSH login and create XM module file to support USB 3 devices and install DHCP server to use up to install IC DHCP server and just some settings. Please refer attached document. Edit like this and set up USB gadget mode and set up DHCP server and DHCP masquerade settings, DNS masquerade settings. And please create some USB 3 setup script. I refer hardware MUK site to use this script like this. And Outrun USB initial script. We want to start up USB gadget mode every time just power on USB-C cables and also start DHCP server as a service every time we start up. So there are nice script this side. So create this USB startup script and copy this to current directory, such as I copied this script to rc5.c. And then once power of Raspberry Pi to input sudo hot and change connection from SSH via wired LAN to USB-C. Use USB-C to C cable, connect between Raspberry Pi 4 and iPad Pro. Later, I demonstrate in using video, just like that. And Pi 4 startup with USB gadget mode, and also start SS server as well as DHCP server too. And install ISH or some shell program from Apple Store or some Android Play or somewhere. This time I open Apple Store to look for ISH app. This is free applications. Just bring shell to your iOS, open ISH app and install OpenSSH packages. And then install SSH client into your iPad, APK at OpenSSH and other package if you need. Then connect Raspberry Pi 4 via SSH. Just connect Pi 4 and iPad Pro. IP address is get from USB-C cable. Then you can connect your Raspberry Pi from iPad Pro. Maybe Raspberry Pi 4 costs $100 or some. You just bring Wireshark environment in your hand and start SSH connections via USB gadget mode and install RDP servers. Connect Raspberry Pi via USB gadget mode. I uses at default setting 10.55.0.1 and iPad gets 10.55.02 from DHCP. So then type SSH to log in default Pi and password Raspberry Pi and confirm the connection via USB-C. I also recommend to install XRDP, remote desktop protocol server, if they are not installed, apt-get install XRDP. Then your iPad changes Wireshark environment. Just press remote desktop, Wireshark comes. You just bring this. So easy. Connect via Microsoft RDP client. In this time, I downloaded from App Store from Microsoft RDP iOS client and open 10.55.01 and log in as same as CLI. Sorry for losing my question. Sake-san, do you need to have a jailbreak iPad to be able to do this? No. Just I use official default versions iPad. iSet is certified applications from App Store. So we do not need such a dangerous jailbreaking or some kind of bad things. Just install iSet and RDP client. It's very easy for us to do so. Gone. Then install Microsoft RDP client and create shortcut of 10.55.0.1 via USB-C, username Pi, password Raspberry. Wireshark works at reasonable speed, Pi 4 with 8 GB RAM. For example, please check actual speed of this. Like this. Open open Wireshark, double tap this. 1, 2, 3. Maybe. Again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Maybe. Reasonable speed, I think it is. Change Wireshark permission settings. It's very effective things for Wireshark to use in Linux environment. We need to administrative privilege to capture packet. So Raspberry Pi works as user mode. So we need to change Wireshark permission to be able to capture packets in user mode. So at first, type sudo the package reconfigure Wireshark common. It start up a setup screen of Wireshark. So choose yes to capture packets in user mode. And add Wireshark group into your user. This time, sudo add user Wireshark Pi to add user Pi into Wireshark group. Then restart Raspberry Pi 4 and log in as Pi again. For wireless capturing, capturing wireless network using external Wi-Fi adapter that support monitor mode is the best way. Because unfortunately, Raspberry Pi 4 internal wireless card, maybe integrated card is Broadcom. It's not work well. So we need to choose better card for wireless capturing. Of course, you can change your source code or some modules or device driver, but it takes a lot of time. So I recommend to this cheap wireless card. For example, maybe $20 Panda Wireless PAU 05 card, just $10 or $20. You can capture wireless. Of course, you may use Kali Linux ARM image instead of Raspberry Pi OS. And open ISH and check wireless card sudo iwconfig and sudo airmon-nz. Check Q to stop wireless related process such as WPS applicant or some DHCP client and so on. And sudo airmon-nz start W1 to change into monitor mode to your external wireless card. And iwconfig again to check their W1 monitor mode interface. Then start Wireshark and choose View Wireless Toolbar to show wireless settings. In this time, View to Wireless Toolbar, check W1 interface. Sorry for no. Later I demonstrate video. And start wireless capturing, and we can change channels and bandwidth of Wireshark to capture wireless in monitor mode. Let's start demonstrations. I have a pre-recorded video, so change new sharing settings and start demonstrations. I love Wireshark and want to bring my Wireshark, SharkFest, T-Shark, and other capture utilities everywhere without PC. All we need is iPad Pro, Raspberry Pi 4, powered by USB-C, and one micro SD, and some case and USB-C and C cables. This time, I use Samsung 128GB micro SD and in 192, 168, 35, Pi and IP address. Login and verify, update Raspberry Pi After finishing update, we need to install control and carry next to. Okay, we are now ready. Finally, we need to change USB gadget mode. Check hello, good, text, config text. And the last line, we need to do the most simple command line text. Long one liner, we need to add statement quiet. Second, wait, quiet, modules, load, security, and listen. Please check this procedure, and I set up this process. Sometimes we need to touch SSH or SSH open, XM modules, composite app, install, IC, edit, and demo, install, create, interface USB and our range is 10 interface is 0. That's the set IP address and standard 55.0.1. We need to create initial script. USB-C to configure USB-C cable identification script like that. Execute right to this script. In this case, I add two files and the first time default 0 and also I see type pronoun pronoun the same sense on the last line. It's time to test my project mode. Hot system is shut down personal stop system. Directly connect to my Raspberry Pi and my iOS. First, I need to install shell application name is iSetch. Open source software to install Linux shell in my iPad Pro. APK and open SSH. Then it's time to connect my Raspberry Pi via just one cable like this. SSH Pi at 10.55.0.1. Yes. Raspberry to connect my Raspberry Pi. Okay. I install Microsoft Facebook client at PC and IP address is 10.55.0.1 and save and open my Raspberry Pi. Username is Pi and password is Raspberry. To connect my Raspberry Pi GUI, I will open Wireshark like this. It show up other devices, show up interfaces, but they cannot capture packet. For this, I need to sudo package configure Wireshark. I need to reconfigure Wireshark. Package reconfigure Wireshark common and non-private user can capture packet here. And sudo as user Apply into Wireshark group. Okay. Then shut down. Restart now. It's time to access my Raspberry Pi as a capture gadget. One Ethernet via just one USB-C and connect my Raspberry Pi via remote desktop protocols called from Wireshark. We can capture Ethernet frame like that. Raspberry Pi integrated Broadcom adapter cannot change monitor mode. So every time we need to next one touches Raspberry Pi. So I recommend to use other external adapter like Alpha for wire capturing. I use Alpha network 336 MH to connect via USB. Open command shell and sudo config to check adapters. My adapter may be here. Sudo check Q all wires process and sudo start double as monitor mode enabled. Under config again, there are one monitor mode interface. To access remote desktop, choose view to show wireless server, check around one monitor mode interface, and select channels, set strings, and it's time to capture wireless one monitor mode. Yes. So you just have just a cheap $100 gadget and maybe $20 wireless card and your tablet, all things done. You can bring any troubleshooting places or any security problems. You can bring this without PC. Let's go on next one. extcap brings the external capture source. The extcap interface is external capture source functions that allows external binary to act as capture interface directly in Wireshark. It's used in scenarios where the source of capture is not a traditional capture model. For example, there are some Bluetooth dongles or some other capture devices. But there are other ways to use extcap. I introduced extcap can use for SSH remote capture or your favorite capture settings as you like. extcap may be any binary or script within extcap directory. Please note that script needs to be executable without processing a script interpreter before the call. But we can create batch file for this. For example, let's test extcap interface, SSH remote capture. Do you remember in WinPcap page, in Wireshark 1 or Israel 0 or Wireshark 2 edges? In those days, in Windows environment, Wireshark is equipped with WinPcap. In WinPcap environment, there are rpcapd executable. rpcapd executable can be run in remote machine, and your Wireshark connect via choose capture options and choose local interfaces to choose remote capture interface to connect rpcapd. But there are no support of WinPcap now, so we use npcap at default. Of course, we can choose WinPcap now, but in those days, I recommend to use SSH remote capture. SSH remote capture is provided by SSH dump. It's an option component with Wireshark. So you need to check tools SSH dump during Wireshark installation process. For example, there are some extcap interface. At install process, we check all tools icons. There are many black gear icons. That means the extcap interface. There are default SSH remote capture extcap interface in Wireshark. Double-click SSH remote capture this black gear icon and edit options. For example, I demonstrate this, start Wireshark and choose SSH remote capture interface black gear icons and set remote capture address at some Linux host. This time we use Raspberry Pi IP address and set remote SSH port number, this time 22 in server tab. Then quick authentication tab, enter remote SSH server username, this time we use Pi, and also input SSH server password, this time we use Raspberry. And some cases we need to input private key, passphrase, or some proxy. And first time we need to save non-host. So first time maybe failed. Anyway, choose capture tab and enter remote interface. Remote interface is a remote site, this time Raspberry Pi interface. This time I set Ethernet 0. And enter remote capture command. Dump cap output captures. So we set output option with -w, and also important to output is libpcap format to standard output. So just input hyphen. Just input hyphen means not to file, but the standard output options. So -w space hyphen is a remote capture command. And check sudo on the remote machines and sometimes check no promiscuous mode. And I think remote capture filter is set automatically, but it may not work well. So in this case, we also set remote capture command to input your capture filter as you like. Then you can set debug file in case of failure. Check run in debug mode in debug tab and the locations of debug file in the text box of user file for debug dialog. Then click Start to Capture at Remote SSH host. You can get trace at right-side remote run interface. Now I demonstrate. Just wait for a while. Pre-recorded videos are here. Let's go. Let's start the demonstrations of extcap interface. This time I use SSH dump. SSH dump is option component. At first, I check my host of Wireshark, choose help about Wireshark, choose folder tab, check global extcap path. By default, first is the program files Wireshark extcap. Later it is SSH dump, then check connectivity. I think to my Raspberry Pi, 10.0.0.101. Okay, test SSH user file at 10.0.0.101. Password is Raspberry. Okay, so let's try extcap to SSH remote captures and click the
option buttons. At first, I input the remote server address in server tab, then go to have this one. And the server port is going to activate port. And if you need to save parameter as a shadow capture, choose authentication part and in the remote SSH server username is type and remote SSH server password is query. And for instance, if you connect the first time to SSH server, it might fail because the first connections we need to save server's public key in the long host. Then save capture tab and set remote interface is Ethernet 0. Capture command is dump right to standard output. So I input the stamp cap -w and space and hyphen and we need to use sudo on the remote side. Wireshark can automatically add some capture filters. We also set the packets to capture. If we set 0, we capture all traffic and choose in debug mode and save the path of debug file in user directory. This time I set the desktop path and create debug. Check again in server tab. We set SSH server address and port numbers. In authentication tab, we set the user file and password raspberry. And capture tab, we set the interface Ethernet 0, the wired interface of Raspberry Pi, and remote capture command from w and output to standard output. And check use sudo on remote machines and capture all traffic and check debug and include the path for debug file inside the desktop. Start connect to Wireshark and collect the packet from Raspberry Pi. Stop capture and check this. Source address is Raspberry Pi and it works correctly. And we also open debug files and hit command line here SSH template capture and connect via SSH and capture correctly.
Let's go on next topics. Back to PDF. It's my time. Then let's test your own extcap interface. extcap is useful, so you can extend capture source. Of course, we can create from zero, but it's so difficult. So this time I just use SSH dump to create your own extcap interface. Of course, there are some nice hardware such as Bluetooth dongle and other capture devices. But this time I test my own extcap interface. At first, please refer Wireshark extcap man page. And we do not need to create a binary, but just a bit of batch file to test the extcap interface. At first, check your extcap path, personal extcap, and global extcap path from help about Wireshark to folder. In Windows default, see users user update roaming Wireshark. extcap is personal. And global is install directory of Wireshark, see program files, Wireshark, extcap. If you use Linux, maybe .wireshark or user bin Wireshark is used instead. Then there are many elements in one page of extcap in Wireshark. So we use these elements to create batch file to work your own extcap interface. For example, this just 4 line, 1 line, 2 line, 3 line, 4 line, create your own GUI of extcap. First line, echo interface, calibrate value test, calibrate display test extcap interface. Next line, echo DLT, calibrate number 147, name test, calibrate display equal layer 2 data link type. Next line, echo argument, calibrate number 1, display order 1, call hyphen host. Hyphen host is a function, and calibrate display filter host name is string, and calibrate type string, calibrate tooltip is equal host name, calibrate required equal true, calibrate default equal 10.0.0.101, calibrate group host is host group tab, and last line is echo argument, calibrate number 2, display order 2, call equal function is hyphen port, and calibrate display equal filter port number, calibrate type equal unsigned data type, and calibrate tooltip port, calibrate range from 1 to 65535, and calibrate default equal 22, and calibrate group equal port. Let me explain this. First line, interface calibrate value equal test. Calibrate display is test extcap interface is definitions of your extcap interface. You can find extcap interface at interface list or startup screen in your Wireshark. And next line is data link type definitions. DLT number 147 is protocol number. I recommend to do not duplicate the protocol number, so I use the big number. Number 147, calibrate name test, calibrate same name test, and calibrate display layer 2 data link type. This means we define the data link type of your extcap. So you can select capture and options and look link layer header column to check your extcap data link type. Then next two line is create of GUI in your extcap interface. Click on black gear icon option button to find your extcap dialog. This one line, echo argument, number 1 is display order, and call hyphen post means a function post, but there are no function. It's just a demonstrations. Next display, filter host name is displayed here. And type string is data type is string. And tooltips equal host means that we show just tooltips menu is a host, and required true in this variable is required, and default equal default value, this time 10.0.0.101, group equal host. Then last line, there are port tab. So last line is echo argument. Number 2 is display order 2, and call hyphen port means call port functions. And display filter port number show up the GUI string of filter port number, and type equal unsigned means port number is unsigned, and tooltip equal port, and range is 165.535 is restrictions of the value, and default value is default equal 22, and tab group is port. So this four line create your GUI of your extcap interface. Then we need to start up capture. To start up capture, check SSH dump command. Open global extcap path in Explorer. In Windows default, see program files, Wireshark, extcap. There are SSH dump executable is in your global extcap path. Open command prompt and execute SSH dump exe. And check online help of SSH stamp exe. There are many options for SSH stamp. We need to describe hyphen captcha, most important one. We need to write hyphen captcha. If we double click extcap interface, hyphen captcha works. So we need to write captcha functions. And also we need to write up other options such as remote port, remote host, remote username, remote password, and so on. And check debug text created by SSH stamp exe. There are nice examples of SSH stamp. There are captcha options, extcap interface option, FIFO options, remote host options, remote port options, remote password options, debug options, remote sudo options, remote captcha command options, and -w options and debug options. We need to rewrite, override this script. We need to create command like below. Call SSH stamp exe and hyphen captcha and set extcap interface FIFO, remote host, remote port, remote password, debug, remote sudo, remote captcha command, and debug options. You may think somehow difficult, but we do not write all things. We just write some small batch files. So let's create another batch file to create your own extcap interface to make use of extcap. It's time of batch file programming. For old person like me, it's easy for creating batch files, but batch file programming is somehow unique. So I explain some small things. For initializations, set command line variables, define command line variables, create set first line, set captcha equals 0 means define command line variables, captcha, and initialize with 0. It's used as flag. And like this, extcap interface initialize as 0 and define extcap interface variables and define extcap DLTS variable and initialize as 0 and set FIFO variables. Then it's create path sections. There are no for loop or such a programming constructions. So batch file we need to use colon sections to define sections and go to section name to go to section again. And this time check command line parameters. Someone may think difficult if double quote percent to the 1 equal null, go to column main. That means if first command line parameters, for example, when we ping 1.1.1.1, 1.1.1.1 is command variables 1. Ping is variables 0, and 1.1.1.1 is command line parameter 1. So check the first parameter without quote, and if no, go to main sections. Next line, check command line parameters, and there are hyphen captcha. Then set captcha flag is on, and this may seem difficult. Shift means preserve parameters and go to path section again. This means check command line parameters, and if there are parameter, set flag and go back again. Same lines below. Check extcap interface and set extcap interface flag and check extcap interface flag. And if there are parameter, set extcap interface as next parameters and preserve parameters and go back again. And if there are parameters FIFO and set FIFO as next parameters and preserve parameters and go back again. And extcap is same one. And then let's check main sections. Main section is process request for interface list from Wireshark. This is important because if we check -- capture and set capture flag is on, go to main sections and check capture flags. Main function check each flags and jump up corresponding levels. If extcap interface is one, whole extcap interface functions and go to end. And if extcap DLTS data link type is one, whole extcap DLTS functions and go to end. And this line is so important. If capture flag is on, and call capture functions and go to end. And last line is exit with large B option. Large B option preserve variables, preserve variables. And then actual process is these sections. For example, extcap interface functions. When we call extcap interface functions, do you remember this line? This line is just this first line, define extcap interface. And if we call data link type functions, define data link type, this line is the same as this next line. Then when we start capture, double click extcap interface, call SSH dump exe with capture options, extcap interface options, FIFO options, remote host options, remote port options, remote password option, debug options, remote sudo options, remote capture command options. This command is so important. In Linux or remote site, call dump cap with large P options. In usual, dump cap returns .pcap or .pcap-ng data. We do not use this. In remote capturing, we need to set large P option. Large P options outputs the libpcap output. To standard output, use -w to output to just use one hyphen to output to standard output. Then remote users and remote interface and call SSH dump with adequate parameters. The last one is the end sections. Let's try customized extcap interface. Copy example 2 but to personal extcap and close and open Wireshark and check your own extcap interface. And double click capture from file and get the trace. Just a double click over your own extcap interface, you can get trace from remote host using Wireshark. Let's start demonstrations videos like this.
This is your own extcap interface. At first, check help about Wireshark and choose folder to find your personal extcap path. In Windows 10 environment, default folder is say user's username, update roaming Wireshark extcap. First, to create just simple text file, create new text document, type it down to text, and then start editing. But first, try to create your own GUI interface using Wireshark. For creating each interface, we need to set interface click on interface name, display name of the interface. Start set the interface, and we also set data link type member is just some kind of design data link type. This time we just use the
there are 10 minutes, so I skip some, create 4 lines and create your own GUI test again.
And check the example words in personal extcap test and cross Wireshark, and open Wireshark again. And there are some my own test extcap interface here. This is just GUI. There are post tab, without name, and record value is 10 specified IP address. And post tab, there's one field with a post number is 92. But if we click start capturing, we will not write anything. So somewhere else. Then try another one. For creating the extcap interface, we need to learn about SSH dump exit. So open Wireshark and choose help about Wireshark and choose folder to check global extcap path the SSH dump exit. So open command prompt and execute SSH dump and check usage of SSH dump. For example, we need to add capture options.
We skip this create main. We need to overwrite this script like this. Need to create these batch files like this, main sections, processing sections, and finish. We just reuse this SSH dump executable.
Options in standard extcap output in personal extcap or extcap format. -w is important in user -w output writes information for the file. But this time, just icon contract will not output user file, but the standard output. I said data file username is file and file capture interface is Ethernet server. Then execute direction and finish execute direction. I hope it works correctly. Open Wireshark again, check interface. This interface is example 1. Example 2 is capture from file. How to quickly And you can get traffic from Raspberry Pi using just one click. So it's very convenient. You can customize your own extcap interface to make use of SSH command.
Yes. So I recommend you do not write all code of extcap. Just use some small batch file to use SSH dump executable to create your own extcap interface. It's very easy. I recommend this. This is some additional. There are some Windows 10 Wireshark plugin for the Raspberry Pi wireless captures. There are customized Raspberry Pi images for Windows 10 environment. Anyway, I recommend to use Wireshark. Just bring 100 small gadgets and USB-C to C cables and iPad. You do not bring your PC environment. You can debug and you can troubleshoot and you can security inspecting using your tablet and iPad. And you can also capture wireless too. Thank you for watching. Please complete the survey and PDF and my supplemental file is here. Of course, I put this Zoom chat link and Discord link. Thank you.
You did nice.